Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A battle-hardened Marine seeks peace in a quiet home until a power-hungry HOA president declares war on his freedom. Fake cops, forged laws, and suburban tyranny collide in a darkly hilarious showdown. This isn't just about property, this is war. I bought this place for the silence. After spending nearly 2 decades in the Marines, I didn't want a cul-de-sac full of cookie-cutter houses or a tightly packed suburb with block parties and kids selling lemonade on every corner. I wanted space, a backyard big enough for my dog, Moose, to stretch his legs, and neighbors far enough away that I didn't have to wave at anyone unless I chose to. So when I found this small workshop-style home on the outskirts of Austin, tucked just beyond the edge of a planned community, I knew I had found it. A little beat up, a little sun-worn, just like me, but solid, defensible, mine. I moved in 5 years ago, and at first, things were quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but after what happened a couple of years back, when a junkie broke into my place while I was at work, tore the place apart, and damn near killed Moose, I welcomed quiet like an old friend. That break-in changed everything. The next day, I installed reinforced locks, motion-detecting lights, face recognition cameras, steel core door frames, and a panic system that links directly to the sheriff's office. Call me paranoid, I don't care. I sleep better knowing I'm the hardest target on this road. The irony is, I never thought the real threat would come from the HOA across the street. Maple Ridge, they call themselves. Sounds like something you'd see on a box of pancake mix. Their entrance is grand. Faux stone walls, manicured hedges trimmed like they were done with dental floss, and a fountain that's lit up at night like the damn Bellagio. I'm not part of Maple Ridge. My property was zoned separately, bought directly from the previous owner, and clearly marked outside their jurisdiction. That was part of the appeal. No HOA, no rules, no one to tell me what color to paint my shed or when to mow my damn lawn. But then came Karen. Karen Walker moved in about 3 months ago and wasted no time making herself known. Short blonde bob, always in pristine athleisure, and the kind of posture that screams, "I have a clipboard, and I will use it." Within 2 weeks, she got herself elected president of the HOA. Within 3, she started poking around properties near the edges, including mine, preaching something about a moral jurisdiction radius, or some kind of suburban gospel I didn't ask to hear. The first envelope came a week after that, typed, sealed, and stamped with the official Maple Ridge HOA logo. I didn't open it right away. It wasn't addressed properly, just resident, and I figured it was junk. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a polite but firm notice of inclusion opportunity outlining a one-time voluntary onboarding fee of $1,200, followed by monthly dues of $150. It listed benefits like community cohesion and aesthetic alignment. I tossed it in the shredder. The next week, I found a handwritten note under my windshield wiper, written in perfectly rounded cursive. "We noticed you haven't responded to the welcome packet. Your formal grace period ends on the 15th. We hope you choose to be part of our values." No signature, just a little HOA logo sticker in the corner, like a smug little stamp of authority. I laughed. I really did. Out loud, right there in the driveway. I figured it was some kind of neighborhood overreach, maybe a mistake. My property records are ironclad. I checked them when I bought the place, and again, after the break-in. Everything's filed and certified. No overlap, no ambiguity. I was outside the lines, and that was that. Then came the invitation. It was hand-delivered. One of the neighborhood teenagers walked it up the driveway, handed it to me like it was a subpoena, then scampered off. The envelope was embossed. The letter inside read like it was written by a cult. All talk about enfolding the outlier into the fabric of our thriving collective, and an obligatory assembly of proximate participants scheduled for Friday at 7 p.m. I was listed by name as the subject of agenda item number 2, forced inclusion under precedent-based community mandate. That was the first time I felt a little tick of annoyance in the back of my skull. Not concern, not yet, just that tingle you get when someone tries to piss on your boots and call it rain. I didn't go to their little assembly. I had better things to do, namely reorganizing my tool bench and giving Moose a bath. But that didn't stop them. Over the next week, I started getting HOA newsletters stuffed in my mailbox, flyers. notices of delinquency taped to my garage. Some genius even left a laminated placard on my door that read, "Failure to comply with community standards may result in corrective oversight procedures." That one I framed and hung in the garage, next to the rack of aluminum baseball bats. By this point, I knew Karen wasn't just playing around. She was escalating. She'd taken my lack of response as some kind of declaration of war. I even caught her walking the edge of my property one afternoon, eyeballing my security cameras like she was casing the place. She saw me watching, waved, and smiled like we were best friends. I didn't wave back. Still, I didn't engage. I didn't call, didn't threaten, didn't go knocking on her door. I'd been in enough real conflicts to know not to throw the first punch, but in the back of my mind, I started to feel it. That old edge sharpening. That part of me I'd hoped to let go when I left the Corps. The one that started asking questions like, what's her next move? How far will she go? Because this wasn't about dues anymore. Not really. It was about someone who wanted control over something that wasn't theirs. And that's a line I don't let people cross. Not ever. The HOA newsletter changed tone around the second week. No more smiley language about community pride and shared goals. Now it sounded like something out of a bad dystopian manual, passive-aggressive with a hint of legalese. Non-participation in community cohesion efforts, one letter claimed, may result in secondary enforcement. Another had a helpful diagram showing a newly adopted 400-foot buffer zone, with my house neatly labeled as non-compliant Parcel A. They'd even color-coded it in red. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be embarrassed or impressed. They had clearly spent some time making me into the villain in whatever self-important HOA PowerPoint presentation they were passing around. Still, I kept my cool. I reviewed my deed again, checked the county land registry online, confirmed what I already knew: my property had zero overlap with Maple Ridge. Zero. Full independence, confirmed and notarized. So I did what any normal person would do. I printed out all the documentation, highlighted the relevant portions, and mailed a certified letter to the Maple Ridge HOA address, along with a little handwritten sticky note. Please stop bothering me. This house is not, has never been, and never will be part of your association. Kindly shove your buffer zone. Okay, I didn't include that last line, but I thought about it. A lot. I figured that would settle things. It didn't. Instead, they escalated. A few days after I sent the letter, a little gray sedan started parking across the street from my house around 10 in the morning and again at dusk. Same car, same spot, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. I got a good look at the guy inside. Balding, sunglasses, holding what was either a camera or a set of binoculars. Hard to tell from the porch. He wasn't subtle, which made me think maybe he wasn't trying to be. Moose didn't like him. That much was clear. Every time the sedan showed up, Moose growled low, ears back, tail stiff. Normally, he's a big teddy bear, but he knows when someone's got bad intent. That's part of why I trust him more than most people. The next week, the weirdness multiplied. Flyers started showing up on my mailbox post, advertising an emergency HOA policy meeting. I was listed as Item 3, unauthorized use of shared infrastructure. Apparently, the fact that I drove on the same public road as Maple Ridge residents meant I was benefiting from their taxpayer-funded maintenance. I almost choked on my coffee when I read that. I live in Texas. We don't tolerate people laying claim to public roads like it's feudal England. But there it was, in writing, complete with proposed road use contribution fees. That one earned a spot on my fridge, right next to Moose's vet appointment magnet. I started getting approached by residents. Not confrontationally, not yet, but with that curious, neighborly, we're just trying to understand energy that always hides a demand. One woman in a yoga outfit stopped me at the gas station and asked if I was the guy who won't join. Another told me that it's not about control, it's about unity. One even said, Karen's trying to help you, you know. You'd be safer with us. Safer. That word stuck in my head like a splinter. Safer from what exactly? That weekend, someone started walking the perimeter of my property at night. I caught them twice on camera. Once a shadowy figure near the backyard fence line, once pacing slowly along the gravel by my garage. Hood up, face turned away from the camera, flashlight in hand. They never came close enough to trigger the floodlights, but it was enough. I added 2 more IR cameras and set Moose to sleep in the foyer. Then came the kicker. I walked out to my truck one morning, Monday, around 7:30. and found a laminated card under my windshield wiper. Final opportunity notice. Failure to engage in voluntary onboarding will result in administrative proceedings under the President Inclusion Mandate. Meeting scheduled Friday, 7 p.m. HOA Clubhouse. Attendance required. Attached with a paperclip. A printed photograph of my house, clearly taken from the street, with the words subject property printed in red across the front door. That wasn't just annoying anymore. That was intimidation. I took the whole bundle, scanned it, filed a report online with the county clerk's office, and forwarded it to my buddy Sean, a deputy I knew from the sheriff's department. Sean called me that night. "Dex, what the hell's going on over there?" "Your guess is as good as mine," I said. "You ever heard of something called a President Inclusion Mandate?" He snorted. "Sounds like something a drunk law student made up during finals. You want me to come out there?" "Not yet," I said. "But I've got a feeling I'm going to be real glad I installed all those cameras." "You think they'll push it?" I looked out the window. The gray sedan was back again, sitting idly across the street. "Yeah," I said. "I think they're just getting warmed up." I was halfway through fixing the tension spring on the garage door when they came. It was just past 8 in the morning, early enough that the dew hadn't burned off the lawn yet, but late enough that most normal people were already at work or sipping their coffee in peace. I was in work boots, cargo pants, grease on my forearms, Moose laying nearby, chewing on a shredded tennis ball. Another normal morning. Then I heard the knock. 3 loud, deliberate thuds. Not the casual tap of a neighbor or a delivery guy. This was the kind of knock that says, "Open the door, or we'll find a way in." I checked the side monitor mounted above my workbench. I've got full perimeter cameras, all angles, and when I switched to the front porch view, I paused. 3 men stood on my porch, all wearing black tactical-style uniforms with reflective vests. The words Community Enforcement Division were stitched across the chest, like they were trying real hard to look official. 2 had sunglasses on. The third, a heavy-set guy with a clipboard, had a ridiculous patch on his sleeve that looked like a homemade badge. It even had a golden oak leaf, like someone tried to Google what police insignia looked like and stitched it onto a budget Halloween costume. The clipboard guy knocked again. "Mr. Dexter Winslow, this is an official HOA enforcement call. Please open the door." I didn't move. He cleared his throat and continued, reading like he was auditioning for a high school production of Law and Order. "You have been served a notice of final non-compliance per Maple Ridge Ordinance 64 Bravo. Under Community Directive, we are authorized to collect unpaid dues and initiate pre-asset assessment procedures. This is your last chance to comply voluntarily." Moose let out a low growl that built into a rumbling bark. I kept one hand on his collar as I unlocked the door, just enough to crack it open. I didn't step outside. I didn't need to. The big guy looked up from his clipboard, trying to look tough. "Sir, we're here to collect payment, $1,200 for onboarding and 3 months of unpaid dues, plus processing." "Processing?" I repeated, blinking at him. "That's correct." He nodded. "Buddy," I said, "I'm not in your HOA. You have no jurisdiction, no claim, and no right to be on my porch." The guy behind him, taller, buzz-cut, clearly the muscle of the group, shifted slightly. He was holding something behind his leg. I squinted. It was a damn taser, civilian grade, but still, not concealed, not legal on my property. Clipboard guy kept going. "We have a directive signed by HOA leadership authorizing escalation in the case of non-compliance." He lifted a single page printed on cheap office paper. It had a Maple Ridge logo at the top and what looked like a fake watermark. "I swear to God," I muttered, "if you guys printed that off Canva." The tall one took a step forward. His boot landed just past the welcome mat, inside the boundary of my entry sensor. He didn't know what he had just done. I reached into my pocket and thumbed the panic button on my key fob. No sound, no siren, just a silent signal sent through my system, directly to the sheriff's office. 3-minute average response time. Clipboard guy continued talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was watching his eyes. He thought he was in control. They all did. Like they were playing real-life SWAT in some HOA LARP fantasy. The third one, shorter, twitchier, with a sweat-stained cap under his helmet, started shifting side to side like he was itching for something to happen. Then the big one made the mistake. He leaned into the doorframe and said, "Sir, if you don't comply, we'll be forced to initiate a soft breach and begin immediate lien enforcement." I blinked. Soft breach. That's correct. "You mean breaking into my house?" Clipboard guy tried to backtrack. It's more of a symbolic my ass, I said, and raised my voice. You're about 5 seconds away from doing something real stupid. That's when Moose lunged. I kept my grip tight, but the sound he made, deep, angry, primal, echoed off the porch like a shotgun blast. The twitchy one flinched so hard he dropped whatever he was holding. It hit the deck with a clatter. A stun baton. A goddamn stun baton. Things were about to go sideways when I heard it. The beautiful wail of sirens cutting through the morning air like a promise. 2 patrol cars skidded onto the street in tandem, lights flashing, doors flung open. Sheriff's Department, hands where we can see them. All 3 of them froze. Clipboard Guy's fake badge fell off his vest as he instinctively raised his arms. The tall one turned to bolt, panicked, made it 3 steps down the stairs, and slipped on a damp patch of concrete, flailing like a cartoon character before hitting the ground with a bone-snapping crunch. He screamed, loud. Jesus Christ, one of the deputies muttered, racing over. That guy just broke his damn arm running from a house he wasn't even allowed to be at. The twitchy one just dropped to his knees, hands behind his head, mumbling something about just being a volunteer. The sheriff himself, big man, cowboy hat, gold star pinned to his chest, walked up to my porch and looked me dead in the eye. You okay, Dexter? I nodded. They brought tasers to a front porch conversation. He grunted, turning back to the fake squad. All right, boys, let's see what kind of brain damage we're working with. The sheriff's team started patting them down. What they found: 2 stun batons, 3 fake badges, a clipboard full of collection notices and property citations typed in Comic Sans, a laminated map labeled Phase 1 targets with my house circled in red, and a handwritten note that read, if hostile, use gentle force. Don't damage property. We don't want another incident. They weren't just idiots. They were organized idiots. The sheriff pulled one of the documents from the clipboard, flipped through it, then snorted. This isn't a legal document. This is a damn printout from Microsoft Word with a coffee stain on it. I could see the local news van pull up at the end of the street, probably tipped off by the scanner. One of the deputies held up a badge and waved them off. The tall guy on the ground was still moaning. The sheriff turned to me. Mind if we take your footage? Already queued it for you, I said, tapping my phone. He nodded approvingly. Smart man. As they cuffed the 3 goons and loaded them into the back of the cruisers, Moose finally laid back down, satisfied. I watched the door of the patrol car slam shut and thought, they came to collect $1,200. Now they're collecting charges. They were still trying to play tough, even in cuffs. Clipboard Guy, real name turned out to be Evan Doyle, was sitting on the curb, wrists zip-tied behind his back, mumbling something about sovereign community enforcement rights, while a deputy cataloged the contents of his backpack, which, to no one's surprise, contained a roll of pre-filled citation forms, all labeled with HOA logos, and what looked like forged barcodes. The tall one, Kyle, I think, was being loaded into the back of an ambulance. His left arm was bent at an angle you don't see unless bones are involved. He'd stopped screaming, but only because they'd given him something to shut him up. The EMTs didn't even look surprised when the sheriff told them how he'd gotten hurt. Just another idiot in a costume falling downstairs he had no business being on. The twitchy one was named Randy. Poor bastard looked like he'd signed up for the wrong Civil War reenactment and ended up in a felony. He kept asking if this would affect his job at the Jiffy Lube. One of the deputies told him it probably would. The sheriff had taken over my kitchen, standing at the counter flipping through a pile of documents his deputies had confiscated from the suspect's fake patrol vehicle. A gray SUV parked 2 houses down. Moose sat next to the table like an assistant investigator, tail thumping each time someone mentioned Karen's name. We got printed eviction warnings, one deputy said, laying them out. 12 copies, all pre-addressed to houses in the neighborhood, including this one. Same HOA seal on each, another added. Looks like they bought a bulk stamp kit from Amazon. There was a manila envelope marked Phase 2 that caught my attention. I asked if I could take a look. The sheriff nodded. Inside were 8 pages, names, addresses, amounts owed, and handwritten notes like avoid confrontation, dogs, and previously threatened legal action, escalate gently. At the bottom of each page, prepared by Enforcement Committee, authorized by K. Walker. Well, the sheriff muttered, setting the pages down. Looks like your Karen's been busy. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So what now?" "Now," he said, "we figure out who else knew about this little cosplay patrol, because I guarantee you, these three didn't come up with this idea on their own." He was right. These guys were too sloppy to build a scam this layered without someone holding the leash. They hadn't just printed a few fake letters. They had full uniforms, purchased online, customized with name tags, clipboards with HOA letterhead, fake parking citations, ID cards with barcodes that scanned into a website. One the sheriff's tech guy discovered was hosted on a Wix page titled civicguardpro.us. "Wix," the deputy said, holding up the laptop. "Wix, man, I'm begging people to at least commit their felonies with Squarespace." The SUV had more inside: a duffel bag full of zip ties, 2 sets of rubber gloves, pepper spray, an open box of door-hanging violation tags, the kind real city inspectors use. But these were labeled Community Enforcement Zone, with checkboxes for things like unauthorized paint color, lawn nonconformity, and, my personal favorite, vibes inconsistent with neighborhood aesthetic. I almost laughed, but then I saw the last form. It was a notice of lien. It had my name on it, my address, and a bold black title, Pending Property Seizure Authorization, Maple Ridge HOA. It was signed, actually signed, by Karen Walker. My chest went tight. I wasn't angry. Not yet. That came later. Right now, I was calculating. The sheriff was already 2 steps ahead. He turned to his senior deputy, a square-jawed guy named Becker, and said, "Get a team over to the Maple Ridge Clubhouse. I want the HOA's internal records, every printed agenda, email, budget ledger. I want it all." Becker nodded and walked off. The sheriff looked at me, eyes sharp. "You okay, Dexter?" I nodded. "I've dealt with worse." He gave me a grim half-smile. "Yeah, but this time you get to watch us clean it up." He turned back to the SUV, "and I'm gonna enjoy every damn second of it." It took another hour to finish the search. They impounded the vehicle, boxed up the contents, and taped off the area like it was a crime scene, which, at this point, it legally was. Before they left, the sheriff handed me a printed acknowledgement form, along with a card. "If you remember anything else, or if you get more of these fake notices, call me directly." I took the card and shook his hand. His grip was firm. As they drove off, Moose and I stood in the driveway, watching the last of the cruisers disappear down the road. The sun had risen fully now, casting long shadows from the porch pillars. Moose stretched and gave me a look like, "Can I finally go pee now?" I scratched behind his ear and smiled. "Yeah, buddy, let's water the lawn. Maybe we'll even break a community ordinance or two while we're at it." By the next morning, Maple Ridge looked less like a picture-perfect community and more like a crime scene politely trying to hide its shame. There were unmarked cars parked outside the HOA clubhouse, suited investigators going in and out with laptops, boxes, armfuls of files. Someone had draped a blue tarp over the HOA's community bulletin board. I assumed to keep the public from seeing the stack of enforcement citations pinned there with thumbtacks like twisted art projects. I wasn't invited to the initial warrant execution, but the sheriff kept me in the loop. Turns out, Karen Walker wasn't just behind the curtain. She built the stage, cast the actors, and directed the whole damn show. She hadn't just given the green light to the fake patrol. She had created an internal security oversight committee without board approval, used HOA funds to purchase uniforms, gear, and even the SUV they were using, forged a letter from the city clerk's office stating that properties within a proximity impact radius could be provisionally governed by Maple Ridge pending legislative adoption. It was impressive in a deeply illegal kind of way. And it got worse. They found the receipts, literal receipts, from hardware stores, printers, tactical supply outlets, all tied to the HOA's shared debit account, the same account that was supposed to be used for landscaping, pool maintenance, and mailbox repairs. Karen had authorized every transaction. Her signature was on all of them. That was enough to get 2 more people arrested that afternoon. The HOA treasurer, a squirrely guy named Brent, who always wore sweaters even in summer, and her compliance director, a retired insurance adjuster with the personality of drywall, named Linda. Both claimed they were just following orders. Of course they did, but the paper trail was solid. Brent had moved over $20,000 into an unlisted special projects fund, while Linda had emailed the patrol instructions for each target property, including mine. At this point, the HOA board was imploding. 2 other members resigned the moment the sheriff's team walked into the clubhouse. Another had already left the state 2 weeks prior. Vacation, they claimed. I wouldn't be surprised if they just kept driving. Meanwhile, my house was turning into a minor media hub. Reporters kept driving by, some stopping to ask questions. I declined most of them, but one guy from a local station asked me what I thought of the situation. I told him, some people build fences, others build empires. Karen built a damn HOA dictatorship and ran it like a soap opera villain. He laughed. I didn't. That night, I got a call from Sean, my buddy at the sheriff's office. You might want to be home tomorrow morning, he said. There's a meeting happening, and you'll want a front row seat. I didn't ask questions, just set my coffee maker and made sure the cameras were recording from every angle. The next day, just after 9, the sheriff and 3 deputies walked up the freshly mulched path to the Maple Ridge Clubhouse, flanked by a representative from the district attorney's office. Local residents stood nearby, pretending to be busy with dog walking or jogging while clearly eavesdropping. Karen had scheduled a community clarification session. I assume she thought she could spin the whole thing as some minor misunderstanding. Her signature move, charm, deflection, and guilt-tripping, all with a smile as tight as a piano wire. She walked out onto the clubhouse steps in a white blazer and HOA pin, like she was about to accept a Lifetime Achievement Award. A podium had been set up. Cameras were rolling. I stood across the street, arms folded, next to Moose. He was panting like it was entertainment. Karen tapped the microphone. I want to personally apologize for any confusion caused by recent security measures implemented by our committee. That was as far as she got. The sheriff stepped up, unfolded a printed document, and calmly said, Karen Walker, you are under arrest for criminal impersonation, conspiracy to commit fraud, misappropriation of funds, unlawful detainment conspiracy, and unlawful use of municipal identifiers. Please place your hands behind your back. She blinked once, twice, then laughed. You're kidding. This is a mistake. He wasn't. Karen tried to step back, but the deputies were already on her. They didn't shove. They didn't have to. The tension in her face cracked for just a moment as they cuffed her in front of everyone. Cameras clicked. Gasps. Someone, I think it was the woman with the Pomeranian, actually cheered. Karen turned toward the crowd, trying to salvage something. This is political. They're targeting me for trying to protect this community. No one responded. Someone filmed her being walked down the clubhouse steps and into the back of the cruiser. She didn't struggle. She just stared straight ahead, like her mind was somewhere else. Maybe flipping through alibis, or wondering how fast her lawyer could make this go away. Spoiler alert, not fast enough. The sheriff looked over at me as the door shut and gave a small nod. Not smug, just solid, like a man ticking a box off his to-do list. Moose wagged his tail. I always thought courtrooms were supposed to feel bigger. Movies make them look grand. Vaulted ceilings, echoing footsteps, judges glaring over half-moon spectacles while gasping juries clutch their pearls. Reality? Beige walls, bad lighting, fluorescent buzz that could fry a mosquito midair, and a smell somewhere between floor wax and bureaucratic despair. Karen sat 2 rows ahead of me, back perfectly straight, blazer freshly pressed. She looked like a PTA mom on trial for insider trading, not for impersonating law enforcement, orchestrating a fake paramilitary HOA squad, and nearly getting someone electrocuted on their own front porch. But she still had that look, like the room owed her something. Her lawyer, some slick-haired suit from Houston, was whispering in her ear the entire time, probably telling her to keep her face neutral, not to react. She didn't. Not when the charges were read out. Not when they introduced evidence. Not even when the sheriff handed over a USB drive full of footage showing her officers threatening to breach my front door with a taser and a Word document. She didn't flinch. Until the DA played the audio recording. That's when she blinked. It was a phone call, recorded just a week before her arrest. Her voice, unmistakable, crisp as day. Look, we both know this isn't a big deal. If you can misplace that complaint packet, there's 10 grand in it for you. Hell, I'll even throw in a landscaping contract. The room went still. You could hear someone clear their throat 2 rows back like they regretted breathing. Karen's lawyer stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled. He objected, obviously, claimed entrapment, claimed it wasn't authenticated, claimed a dozen things that all sounded desperate. Didn't matter, because right after that, the prosecution introduced Thomas D. Vickers, city clerk, longtime municipal employee, and now star witness number 2. Turns out, Thomas had been very cooperative once the sheriff's office traced a string of falsified city documents back to his login credentials. He'd signed off on 3 separate buffer zone authorizations, all fake, all delivered to Karen with gold seal stickers purchased from an office supply store. He'd received several thousand in consulting fees from a shell HOA fund Karen had established 6 months prior. One of the payments had the memo line, "Map Alignment Services." Map alignment. Thomas didn't even try to deny it. When called to the stand, he looked like a man halfway through a nervous breakdown and just trying to land softly. He admitted to signing the forms, admitted to backdating official stamps, even admitted that he'd suggested the term precedent inclusion mandate because it sounded official but vague. By the time he was done testifying, Karen looked like someone had dumped a bucket of cold water down the back of her spine. Still composed, but barely. The DA's office hit her with new charges that afternoon. Attempted bribery of a public official, criminal conspiracy with a government employee, wire fraud, use of falsified municipal credentials, perjury for prior statements on HOA documentation. And just like that, her neat little neighborhood power play had become a federal case. She tried to pivot, claimed she had been misled by her board, claimed she didn't know the documents were fake, claimed she was the victim, manipulated by overzealous volunteers who took her community vision too far. Didn't work. They had emails, dozens of them. Karen Walker, Maple Ridge HOA to Thomas D.V. City, Austin. Please make sure the seal looks real this time. I don't want another neighbor checking boundaries. Another. Send the doc by Friday. We have a target resisting inclusion and I want to make an example. One of the jurors actually rolled his eyes when that one was read aloud. The DA ended that session by requesting Karen's bail be revoked, citing risk of flight, intimidation of witnesses, and active efforts to obstruct justice. The judge didn't hesitate. Bail revoked. Karen was cuffed right there at the defense table. She didn't cry, didn't scream, but her mouth twitched, just once, like she'd bitten down on something bitter and couldn't spit it out in public. I watched her being led out of the courtroom with the same calm I used to feel clearing a weapons cache in hostile territory. Calculated, focused, clean. Outside the courthouse, a couple of reporters tried to stop me for a comment. I gave them the same line I'd given the last ones. Some people build fences, others build lies. She tried to enforce both, and neither held up. Then I got in my truck, turned the key, and drove home. My inbox dinged as I pulled into the driveway. New email from the sheriff's office. Subject line, Maple Ridge HOA. Disbandment order in progress. I sat there for a moment, staring at the screen. Then I opened the door, let Moose hop out, and we walked inside. Courtrooms don't usually erupt in applause. It's frowned upon, apparently. But when the judge read the verdict and the sentence that followed, someone in the back, maybe one of the Maple Ridge residents who'd spent the last year being bullied by letters with Comic Sans headers, let out a single sharp clap, then another, then a murmur. And finally, when the gavel came down, the gallery burst like a shaken soda can. 10 years. No parole. Karen Walker, suburban queen, moral guardian of perfectly trimmed hedges and aesthetic values, was going away for a full decade. Not probation, not community service, not house arrest in a nice condo with avocado toast and Netflix. 10 actual years. Federal time. No HOA newsletter editing privileges where she was going. The judge had made it crystal clear. Her actions weren't well-intentioned overreach, as her defense claimed. They were calculated, coercive, and dangerous. The fake police squad, the intimidation, the forged documents, the bribery, all of it was presented like a machine she built from scratch and then unleashed on the community under the guise of order. I was called to the stand earlier that morning. I didn't say much, just confirmed the timeline, handed over my security footage, and read out loud one of the fake notices they'd taped to my door. Failure to integrate may result in property reclamation proceedings. The judge raised an eyebrow at that one. Reclamation? I just nodded. Apparently, they thought HOA bylaws outranked the U.S. Constitution. That got a chuckle from someone near the stenographer's desk. The prosecution played the audio again. Karen offering a bribe to the city clerk, like she was ordering lunch. The courtroom was silent. She still didn't flinch, but the jury did. I could see it in their eyes. The disbelief had been replaced with something else. Not just condemnation, contempt. Then came the surprise witness. One of Karen's former officers, Randy, the twitchy one, had flipped fully. Showed up in a tie that didn't match his shirt, and a fear of public speaking so strong, I thought he might pass out. But he brought receipts, literal ones, copies of memos Karen had handwritten, a list of priority violators, voice memos she sent during their little HOA raids. One clip. Don't let him talk circles. Stand firm. He's military. They respond to dominance. That one hit a little different. By the time closing statements rolled around, the defense had been reduced to begging. They claimed Karen had been under pressure to protect the neighborhood, that she'd simply made errors in judgment. The prosecutor, in contrast, stood calmly and said, Karen Walker didn't make errors. She made decisions, repeatedly. And those decisions turned a voluntary organization into an extra-legal enforcement racket with fake cops, forged warrants, and intimidation campaigns. That's not a mistake. That's a conspiracy. Bang, bang, bang. Game over. After sentencing, Karen stood up, as if to make a statement. Classic move. The room fell quiet. Her lawyer gave a slight shake of the head, clearly wishing she wouldn't. But she did. I tried to hold this community together, she said. I tried to instill order in a place where people flaunted the rules. I was the only one who was willing to do what had to be done. The judge didn't even respond, just nodded to the bailiff. She was cuffed, again, and walked out for the last time. Outside the courthouse, people were waiting, residents, reporters, even a guy selling t-shirts that said, I survived the HOA state with my house printed in the background like a war monument. One reporter shoved a mic in my face. Mr. Winslow, what would you say to the other HOAs out there watching this unfold? I didn't pause. Enforce flowers, not fascism. Later that evening, I got a call from Sean. He sounded relaxed. The tension we'd all been living under had finally broken. She's booked. Processing now. Cell block 9. I asked, any chance she tries to run a HOA from inside? Sean laughed. Only if she can get the cellmates to agree on a paint color. They took the sign down last week. The one that used to hang at the entrance of Maple Ridge, that little wooden archway with fake ivy, and the carved slogan, a community of harmony. Someone had painted over the harmony part months ago, replaced it with hell. I never found out who did it, but I sent them a 6-pack anyway. After the sentencing, the fallout was biblical. The HOA board, gutted and leaderless, tried to hold an emergency meeting. It turned into a shouting match that ended with someone throwing a plastic chair and another guy storming off yelling about bylaws and divine judgment. The county issued a formal audit. Turned out half the HOA's infrastructure fund was gone. Landscaping vendors hadn't been paid in 3 months. The pool was green. The clubhouse HVAC had been running 24/7 since spring because Karen liked it cool. The final nail came when the sheriff's office submitted a formal liability report to the county, listing Maple Ridge HOA as responsible for restitution to multiple parties, including yours truly. The insurance company bailed. Lawsuits piled up. Within 60 days, Maple Ridge HOA was formally dissolved under Title 11, Chapter 22 of the Texas Property Code. All assets frozen, remaining funds to be distributed under court supervision. What's left of the neighborhood is now under temporary management from a third-party administrator who looks like he wants to be anywhere else. Karen's house, or what used to be hers, was seized under forfeiture statutes. I watched them clear it out. A lot of white furniture, a weird number of throw pillows with passive-aggressive quotes. One said, live, laugh, love. Another said, respect the rules or leave. Oh, the irony. The property was auctioned off to a commercial developer. Last I heard, they're planning to build a duplex. Something modern, sleek, non-HOA. As for me, I took the settlement. $350,000 in damages, legal fees, and what the judge called psychological torment due to HOA paramilitary activity. I used some of it to expand my security system, tripwire detection, upgraded camera feeds, full thermal overlays, and a new reinforced front door made of aircraft-grade aluminum. I also bought a bigger truck. The rest went into a new business, Vigilant Consulting, Homeowner Defense Solutions. I consult now. For folks caught in HOA wars, neighbor disputes, and anyone who just wants to know how to keep their damn house safe from suburban crusaders, I've got a waiting list 6 months long. My story ended up on the news more times than I can count. Someone made a podcast episode out of it. One of the true crime channels called me the man who shot down an HOA without firing a shot. I still live in the same house. Moose is older now, sleeps more, but still perks up every time a clipboard shows up on my security feed. And I added a little something to the front gate. A custom steel sign, matte black, laser engraved. It reads, "This property is protected by the Constitution of the United States and a $12,000 security system. Try me, and you'll end up where Karen did." No one's tested it yet, but if they ever do, well, I've got extra zip ties in the garage.